Welcome to another episode of An Extraordinary Take, where we share extraordinary ideas and visions with extraordinary people. My name is Sibonisile Ngubane-Khosa, and I'm so excited that you've taken the time to join me as we learn and grow together. Let's get into it, shall we? Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of An Extraordinary Take. My name is Bo, and it is such an honor again to be sitting here and chatting to you. I have had just the most amazing experience with this podcast so far. But actually, before I start, I did want to say that I have this I don't know what to call it, but essentially it's where the podcast goes through. So I upload all my podcasts there, and then it kind of takes it to all the different places. Like I don't know if iHeartRadio is one of them, but basically, why am I forgetting the name of all the, what are the names of the things? There's Spotify, yes, my brain. Spotify, Apple Podcasts and whatnot. But what's great about the tool, yes, we'll call it that. What's great about that tool is that it also lets me know where people that are tuning in are from, essentially. And that's been such an interesting thing for me to kind of look at. And I'm saying it now because I'm based in South Africa. But I've essentially realized through looking at the tool through which I post my podcast that I have quite a large following of people that aren't just South African, and that's important for me to remember, because I usually speak as though I'm just speaking to South Africans, in the sense that I'll use certain words from isiZulu and kind of just assume that everybody understands what it is that I'm saying, which is also kind of dumb, considering that even in South Africa, we honestly have so many different languages. But I did want to say, I would love to get to know who all these people are. If you are tuning in from wherever other country, please do just share a comment on the podcast. I know majority of those people listen through Apple Podcasts and Spotify. But please leave a comment, just saying where it is that you're from. I'd love to get to know you, and to get to know what it is that you like about the podcast. I really do think that we expand beyond just, us here, beyond just the South African audience, because we do talk about stuff that's quite universal. So it makes sense that there's so many of you, but I did want to apologize for all the times that I just will go off in Zulu without any form of translation. I know we also have quite a few people from the continent as well. And there's all kinds of languages. So that was interesting. I would really, really love to hear where you're from. So please do that for me. But anyway, to get to today's episode, today is really just, I think I want to call it more of a story time. And it's informed by a TikTok video I saw a couple of days ago, where this creator, I can't for the life of me remember, I think their name is Magasku. They essentially create these funny kind of TikToks, but every once in a while, they'll share some stuff about their life, and it's always really, really interesting. But they were sharing a story that I know will also resonate with a lot of particularly like African people, of how, when we were growing up, and that was before like ablution facilities or anything like that was inside the house. Like everything was outside. So what would happen is, if you lived with your grandmother, which I did, she'd kind of say to you, like, you'd want to maybe go pee or whatever, and she'd say like, go outside, and she'd stand by the door and just kind of watch you. But in their TikTok, they were talking about how their grandmother would send them to like the next door neighbors, but often it would be so dark that they're so afraid, and the grandmother would kind of just stand by the door and say, "Hamba ngiyakubona," which means like, "Go, I can see you." And it was just a thing. And it's so crazy that so many of us had this experience, because when I heard them say that, I was like, oh, that's so true. My grandmother used to do that to me all the time, where I'm like, I'm scared, it's dark, I can't see. And she'd be like, "Hamba ngiyakubona, go, I can still see you." And then the further you'd go, obviously now when you look back, because there isn't like electricity outside or anything, it was before the time of electricity, for us at least, you can't see them now, but they'd keep kind of just saying like, "Hamba ngiyakubona," like, "Go, I can see you, go, I can see you." And it's so crazy, but you trusted that. Like genuinely, you would keep going, and you trusted that even though you couldn't see them, they were there and they were watching you and they could see you. And you'd go and you'd come back. And for all you knew, they'd gone back and they were having tea, or they'd gone back to bed. There was no way of knowing, but you did trust that. And this creator was essentially saying that that's how they view their life, and that's how they come, I guess, at like faith, right? Through this lens and through this idea that whatever new, like uncharted territory you're kind of going into, God is standing by the door and is kind of saying like, "Go, I can see you." And every time you look back and it's getting like a little bit more darker and you're like, I'm scared, you can still hear the voice like, "Go, I can see you, go, I can see you." And I loved that analogy so much, because I felt like that has been so true to my own faith journey, where really I have gone into spaces where I had no idea how it was going to work out. I didn't have a plan for what was to come next, but just somehow believed that I could keep going and that God could see me and that I was being watched over. Because there's so many things, so much lives in the unknown. There's so much that we don't have an adequate idea of how it's gonna kind of turn out. But there's just these moments where you can see that you aren't alone. You can see that there is support in a way that you can't put into words. And when I was listening to the creator talk about this whole idea of like, "Go, I can see you," I started going back to the many instances in my life where I really I didn't have a plan. I wasn't sure what was going to happen next. I didn't know what was going to become of me. And in those instances, I was also filled with a lot of anxiety, because being in any situation where you don't know what your next looks like, or where you can't really predict for the most part what's going to be happening, can be so difficult. But I look back at those moments now, and they're some of my most pivotal faith moments. They are ones where I really use to anchor myself even now, to remind myself that things always work out, even when they don't work out the way that you think that they were supposed to, they still work out. And so I wanted to use today's episode as like just a story time, really, of all those moments in my life, and to encourage you to remember your own as well, so that as you step into whatever it is that you're stepping into, as you step into whatever your version of unknown looks like, you can kind of keep that voice in your head of like, go, I can still see you, or go, like, I'm watching you. And I remember like one pivotal moment, or the very, I guess, major one in my life, that I'm going to start with, is when I was in high school. And I think I've told this story before, but I was in high school and I'd had my last year of high school kind of ended pretty rough, in that I was all over the place. I didn't have it all figured out. I didn't know what I was going to go do or study. I didn't know what my plan was. And it was so strange because I was quite a promising student, not from an academic perspective. I think academically I was okay. But like I was promising in the sense that like I was one of those students that was so active, and I participated in so many things, and I was often like the face of so many things that were happening at my school, right? So for me to come to my matric year and to not know, am I going to university? Which university am I going to? What am I going to study? What's my plan? Was so insane for me. But that was the truth. And while dealing with that uncertainty, I was also dealing with this feeling that I was leaving home, because school really felt like home to me. It was boarding school, and it was a very small school, so we were all like very close. All the teachers knew you by name, and I didn't have the best, I guess, home environment, and so I escaped home with school. So I was just going through this kind of one identity crisis of not knowing what my plan was, of not also being like clear on exactly what it is that I wanted to do, whereas a lot of my other classmates were like, I'm going to study this and I've already been accepted here, you know? So anyway, we get to the like last week of school, where now we're starting to pack our clothes, and you're packing clothes that you've had with you for years at school, because we lived there. Like I'd lived there for 7 years. We're packing our stuff away, and I'm in my room and I'm packing, and I'm feeling so down. I'm feeling so despondent. I'm feeling so afraid. But I'm also feeling kind of neglected by God. Like I'm feeling like, sheesh, this is it. Like this is it. Because at this point I'm like, okay, it looks like I'm just going to go home, and I'm going to be one of those kids that spend time where they should be studying. Because back then that's all we knew. You had to leave school and you had to study. So I'm like, I'm just going to go home, and I'm just going to, I guess, be one of those. And it just felt like such an anticlimax to what my life in high school had been. So I'm there, I'm packing, and I'm really dreading everything. I'm dreading going back home. I'm dreading leaving school, leaving my friends, leaving my teachers who felt like my parents. And at this point, I also already know that the chances of me actually being able to go study or things working out are close to nil, because my family had sat me down And my mom had essentially said that she'd made the decision to quit work, and she was going to go study full time as well. She wanted to go back to school. And it felt like the worst possible timing to do that because she was my primary caregiver. So I'm like, if you're leaving work to go study the same year that I'm supposed to go study, what does that mean for me? And essentially the answer was, well, you can just wait till she's done studying and then we can have the conversation thereafter. And she was going to study a degree for 4 years. And it's still so wild think about it now, but that's what I was told. So you can imagine what's kind of going through my head and just how depressed I'm feeling at this moment. Anyway, I'm packing. And then somebody comes and they say to me like that my principal's calling me into her office. And at this point, I'm so despondent about everything. I'm just like, what now? Like, what could it get any worse? What have I done? What does she know? What's going to happen to me? And anyway, to cut a long story short, my principal calls me in and she tells me that she read my Afrikaans essay. She was my principal, but she was also my Afrikaans teacher. She read my Afrikaans essay and she just hasn't been able to forget it, you know. And I go, okay. And my Afrikaans, by the way, wasn't really that good. I'm shocked she understood anything in what I wrote. But she says to me, she looks at me, you know, and she says, I think you should stay here. I think you should stay. I don't think you're ready to leave. And I think you should stay. This is your home and you should stay. And I'm like, what do you mean I should stay? I finished matric. It's like it's done. I can't. And she says, no, you love English, and you are so good at it, and your marks were incredible. So you can come back as a teacher in training, and you can train under your English teacher. That was Mrs. Tasseron at the time. And then we can pay for your studies, and you can become a teacher. And I'm just, let me tell you, I cannot believe that this is happening. At first, it feels like a joke. It feels like a prank. It feels like, you know, but the moment that she says it, I know I want it. And it also, in my head, I'm like, if this is real, this is crazy. And this is my lifeline, you know? Anyway, we sit there and we have this conversation. And of course I say yes, because what do you mean? And she was right about everything. I did love English so much. And I actually ended up staying and I ended up teaching there for 3 years. And the first time I got into a classroom and my actual trainer wasn't there and I was doing it by myself, it felt like the most natural thing for me. And I was so good at it. But I would have never imagined, right? That wasn't part of my plan. I didn't even know that was within the realms of possibility. But I left that week and went home, and I could say that I knew what I was going to do with my life for the, you know, for at least the unforeseeable future. Or for the foreseeable future, at least. I still, to this day, look at that experience as one of the greatest moments of my life, because it taught me that you don't always have to have a plan. And that sometimes even when you plan, if you have a plan and your plan falls apart, there is always a greater plan. Because I could have not even thought to go to my principal and ask her to stay. I didn't even know that that was a possibility. But the fact that it just happened that way without me having asked for it, without me having even thought of it, without me having even like said to myself, maybe this is what I could do. Like it, at no point did it pop up into my head. It allowed me to trust in something bigger than me, and specifically in God so much more, to say, oh, even when I don't have it figured out, there is someone that is still curating my life. There is someone that is still ordering my steps. There is someone that is still making sure that I am being seen. There's someone that's still making sure that things do work out for me. And that was such a pivotal moment in my faith journey, because I went, okay, I'm really not alone. Like for real. You know, and I remember going back into my room and I was so moved and I couldn't stop crying. And I opened my Bible, you know, and just randomly, you know, and I read this verse on how Abraham was justified through faith, you know, and not by works. And it felt like in that moment that God literally said to me in that moment that it's not about what you do. Like you can do all the things that you do, but I will always come through for you. And you trusting me is all that matters. You just keep trusting me. And when I tell you that has radically changed how I view my life, and that transformed everything that I went into after that, I could see it everywhere. And I was so much more bolder in the things that I was stepping into. Like after that, I went to go on and do my first movie because I just believed that it had been a dream of mine, and I believe I could, and I did, you know. But I stayed there for 3 years, and then after that, I decided to go on a new path, and I went to study PR and journalism. And after studying, my teacher said to me, I think you do well, you know, in this career. Anyway, I was also still kind of figuring it out. But in a couple of months out of it, I get an internship at News 24 and Huffington Post. And again, it's just this incredible opportunity. But I'm also thrown into the deep end. Like, I don't know what to expect. I don't know what I'm going to do. But again, it works out, right? And I'm saying all of this to say, like, there was a moment where later on, I was at work and I started chatting to my colleagues, and we were talking about our former selves, like how when we were younger, we were so much bolder to go for certain opportunities, to go into certain rooms. Like one of my colleagues was saying, like, she would just hit up certain executives and ask for meetings and pitch ideas to them and whatnot, and that so many opportunities came out of that. But how the more successful we got, we kind of, that part of ourselves dampened, and it feels like so much fear took over. And essentially what it looked like was that it now felt like we had to do whatever it is that we wanted to achieve. It was within our own power. We had to make it possible, and we didn't trust ourselves to do it. But back then, there was just like this thing of, I'll knock on whatever door and somebody's going to respond. And I'm telling my own faith stories and my own faith chronicles, if you may, to say I do believe that everybody has versions of that for themselves, where you are so much more fearless. You trusted that even though you didn't have a full plan, even though you didn't have an idea of how it will work out, it would, because of the moments where, like me, where I didn't know what was going to happen, where it worked out. Those kind of fueled your faith, right? So After my internship, I kind of still then, because it was only for a certain amount of time or period of time, I again still didn't know. Okay, I was like, okay, this is great, but what now? Like, what's next? And one day I find myself I'm on my laptop and I'm kind of looking at opportunities. I knew I wanted to go to Joburg. I wasn't really quite sure for what. I think I was looking for PR jobs, but I didn't have the experience and nothing was really coming up. Anyway, I stumble upon this thing, and it's an entry form for One Day Leader, which is a leadership show, television show, where they bring like young people together, and there's an elimination process. It's like Idols, but like for leadership, essentially. And they get to debate different issues going on in the country, but also get to it's like an opportunity for young people to say, if I was president or if I was in a specific leadership position, how would I fix some of the issues that we face in our country? So I find this thing and I'm like, I didn't really know what it was fully at the time, but it says it's looking for young people. At that point, I'm like, the cutoff was 25. I was going to turn 25 that year. So I had just made it. But I try to do it anyway. And I get called in for like a callback, and I get interviewed. We get to debate, and then they keep cutting down. I think we started from like, I don't know, top what? There were so many of us, but then we cut down to top 20, and we kept cutting down until it was top 6. And top 6 were the people that would actually then make it onto the show, live together, and essentially be on television every week debating all these issues. I make it into top 6. Something that, again, I had never even heard of this show. I didn't even know that it existed. But again, it's another lifeline, you know, and it becomes just such an incredible opportunity. But what is also interesting about that is, in the end, I make it into the top 2, right? And at that point, whoever wins, it's not just based on how great your debate is, but it's based off of how many people actually vote for you. So here we had to rally people to vote for us. You had to go to like universities, go to different communities, and essentially ask them to vote for you. And I was with it. It was just me and a friend of mine, Zongezile, and he went to Wits. So he had a massive kind of community there. And we kind of go through this thing, and we're right at the end. He ends up winning, and he comes out, you know, first, and I came second. And it's like kind of disappointing, but I still felt so proud of how far I'd come. Like the fact that this thing had started with thousands of people entering, and we were down to the last 2, and I was one of them. I couldn't believe it, you know. But how, again, Faith Chronicles, it's so crazy how God works, is now it feels like, okay, back to square one. What do I do again? Turns out that one of the judges on the show is actually owns a PR company, which is the job that I had been looking for after I had finished university. And literally at the end of the last episode, after we had done shooting, he comes to me and says, let's meet next week. I want to interview you, and I think you could be part of the team. And we did the interview, and he hired me on the spot, and I got to work with him for a couple of years after that. And I just could not believe it. But in all those moments, I had no plan. I didn't know what it is that I was going to do. I didn't know what the next moment looked like. And it reminds me, you know, of this one time I was in church, and one of the pastors was preaching, and he was talking about this verse that says, like, your word is a lamp unto my feet. And he talks about how a lamp is really a very small light, and it can only show you as far as the next step. Like, it's not going to show you the entire journey. It's not going to show you the entire process. It's just going to show you for as long as you need to make the next move, and for as long as you need to make the next step, you know. And that's what it's really been, you know, in my life, where I'm like, okay, I've taken this step. What is the next one? You know, what does the next thing look like? I've never been at a point where I could tell you fully what the next couple of years are going to look like. And because of that, I've never been one of those people that can tell you their 5-year plan, because how my life has worked and my faith journey has worked is that it always comes as a surprise, but it's always so much better than anything I've asked for. It's almost so much bigger, and it always works out in ways that I could have never conjured up, you know. Hi there, just a quick pause. I hope you're enjoying the episode. If you are, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you're not subscribed yet, now's a great time to do it. All right, let's jump back in. And when I started working, I want to tell you again another story of one really pivotal moment of my faith journey that I try as much as I can to go back to. I was still young, and so obviously we were getting paid. It was the first time that I was like earning quite a sizable kind of income. But it would never last me till month end. I always finished my money before, it was month end. But at some point, my boss said to me and my colleague and our other colleagues that everybody that worked at the company had to have a license, right? And he'd been speaking about this for years. And I don't know what had happened, but for whatever reason, I don't know if he had given us the money and we used it on something else. I don't remember, and I hope he never watches this. But I didn't have the money for it. And at some point, I also didn't even have transport to go and book it. And he had said, what I want is I just want proof that it has been booked. And I want to make sure that this thing is going to happen, right? So I'm sitting in my apartment and I'm kind of going, I'm like broke. Like I have zilch, nothing. And I had asked people, and no, like even my colleague, she also had nothing. And I need to go to this place so I can book for this license. So I sit there and I decide, you know what, I'm just going to go. And I remember getting up and kind of walking around my room and saying, okay, God, I don't have a plan, but I'm just going to leave my apartment. I'm going to walk up to the street, and I'm just hoping you're going to make something happen for me. I don't know what, but I need to get there. I need to get to this place, even though I don't have the money to get there. And I'm just kind of going to trust that you're going to make it work. I am also doing this very scared, but I'm trying my luck. Anyway, I walk out and I walk up to the main road, and I didn't even have money for taxi fare. So I'm kind of just standing there because I don't want to really put up my hand to get a taxi when I don't know how I'm going to pay for it. So I'm kind of just standing there, and I think there was this car. It had driven like probably, I don't know, once or twice. And after a while, it turns out this car's an Uber. This guy stops for me. And he's like, where are you going? And I'm like, oh, I'm going to the traffic department, but I don't really know the way. And I've never been there, but I need to go because I need to, book for this license thing, And he says, okay, get in the car. Now, one, I'm like, either I'm going to get kidnapped, or this could actually work out for me. But I say, okay, I asked for God to show up, and maybe this is it. So I get in, and the whole time I'm just like, oh, I hope this guy one, doesn't kidnap me, but also I hope he doesn't ask me out because dudes are weird. But I'm just like, okay, let's see, let's try it out. And we drive. Okay, the conversation's like easy. He doesn't seem to be a creep. He asks me about this whole license thing. I tell him, oh, my boss has been sitting on our necks for us to do it for a long time, and I just kept putting it off. But I'm gonna go, and I'm just gonna hope for the best. And he's like, oh no, you're gonna be fine. It's gonna work out well. Then the closer we get, the more afraid I kind of become, because I'm like, that's the point, especially because this car is an Uber. That's the point where I might be asked to pay some money. And I know that I don't have any. And I also don't have a plan for what I'm going to say to this guy if he says to me like, okay, it's going to be this much. And it was quite far. So we get closer and closer and closer and closer. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? Anyway, when we get there, he's like, okay, Sissy, all the best. Like, uhambe kahle, like, go well. Good luck. And I go, thank you. And I get out of the car and I didn't have to pay, And when I was walking in, I was so grateful. I literally had tears streaming down my face because it seemed like such a small thing, but it again was another reminder that I was not alone, that every moment I chose to step out on faith, every moment I chose to step out into a darkness, not knowing where I was going, God was always watching me and he always had a plan for me. And I always try to go back to, those moments in my life and stories like that, because they remind me that even with all that I know now, and even with all that I've achieved now that I think I've done myself, there's always room for childlike faith. There's always room to go into spaces where you don't really fully know how it's going to work, where you haven't fully figured it out yet, but to still trust that just like back then, where you didn't have this much bravado, where you didn't have this much kind of, oh, this is who I am and this is what I've done, where it worked out, it can still work out the same way. And another story I want to tell, I've got so many, and they kind of randomized, they're in no particular order, but I remember the one time when I was a student, and I was a student and a poet, and we had gone to the Playhouse, and we were going to watch a poetry show. It was a jazz and poetry show. And we're kind of just hanging around. Our friends were going to be performing. There's this great jazz that's playing. We're dancing, we're laughing, we're having a good time. And on the staircase at the Playhouse, there were these two ladies sitting there and kind of just watching us, unbeknownst to us, right? We didn't know that they were watching, but obviously after they called us, then I figured it out. So we're dancing, we're having a good time. Then this lady, she calls us up. It was me and this other guy, friend of ours, and she says, tell me your names, like, who are you guys? So I tell her, and he tells her, and she says, oh, I just love your energy. You guys seem so happy, and just like young, and whatever. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Oh, thank you so much. The usual. Then she says, we've got a conference happening a couple of like about a week from now, I think. And I'd love for you guys to come through and help us. It was a World Leisure it was a World Leisure Conference where essentially people who study leisure all over the world. I didn't know people studied leisure, but there are people that study leisure, but they study like parks, the importance of parks in communities and things like that, and essentially the importance of leisure. She's like, we're having the conference. It's the first time that it's being hosted in South Africa, and we're looking for young people that can volunteer and that can welcome the delegates and just help us out. Would you guys like to be part of that? I'm like, oh, I'm a student, I'm not really doing much. So I'm like, yeah, sure. Then she gives us her details, asks us to come through to her office the next week. I end up going. A friend of mine doesn't pull through. So when I get there, she tells me about this whole thing. It sounds interesting. South Africa is hosting all of these delegates from across the country. And she's just like, I just like your energy. So I thought you should be part of it. Anyway, I joined the other volunteers. But as this whole thing kind of goes, I end up kind of just being right in the center of it. I'm welcoming everybody. I'm helping out. I'm helping to organize and put this thing together. But I love it. Like it makes so much sense, and I'm enjoying it to a point where this lady eventually says, "We've got our gala dinner at the end, and I want you to host it. Like I want you to MC it." I'm like, what? But I'm like, okay, let's go. She's like, I want you to MC it. And it's such a big event. Every single country's there. And this is the last night. And the biggest activity from like the whole thing. So she asks me to MC. Okay, I agree. And then I also call another friend of mine who was a poet to come through so that we could do a performance at the end of the night. She was going to perform a poem and I was going to sing. Okay. So my friend says, okay, no, stunning. Let's do it. She comes through. We do the gala event. I perform and it's great. At the end of that, one of the guys was one of the delegates from Hungary, I think. He comes through and he says, the performance was so great. We've got a world, it was the World Children's Concert or something, like World Children's Concert, something like that. It was so long ago, I forgot, that we're hosting in China, in Hangzhou. And I think you guys should come. Like your performance would be so great there as well. So how the concert essentially worked is they got a bunch of young people all over the world representing their countries to go and perform there. And from what it seemed like at the time, I think we were going to be the only South Africans representing South Africa. They had people from all over the world. And he had now just discovered us there. I'm like, wait, what? That's insane. Now, what's crazy about the story is I had auditioned for Poetry Africa. And Poetry Africa was like the biggest poetry kind of stage or event in Africa at the time. I think it still is. It was massive. And I had been prelude the previous year, which actually meant that year I would just be on the main stage. So I was expecting them to call me and for me to make it through. They announce the lineup and I'm nowhere in the lineup. I am so distraught because everybody that had seen me on the prelude stage, like the previous year, was like, oh, you're definitely going to make it. I remember that's when I met Lebo Mashile and I had opened for her and she was like, oh, you're definitely going to be on the main lineup next year. Does not happen. And I'm just so sad. But anyway, this thing is kind of keeping me, I guess, distracted. So when this guy says this opportunity, tells us that we could go perform in China, I'm like, it sounds too good to be true. But having seen how things had been going in my life, a lot of the things that seemed too good to be true would actually end up happening. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to try it. The only catch was that we had to pay for our own flights and essentially get ourselves there. Then they would cover everything else because we were so late into the process. Anyway, the friend that I was performing with, she opts not to go. I don't know what the story was at the time, but I really want this, right? So I start fundraising. I start like reaching out to different kinds of people, finding out if I can get flights for this thing sorted out so that I could go. And it's such a mission. Like we are at this point about a week before the event and I have received no funding, like nothing. I went to arts and culture. I went everywhere. And everybody was just like, budgets are closed. This was around October. It's done, you know? So I'm like, yo. And I remember there's this one moment where I'm like, my time for getting a visa is becoming very, very limited. And it's not looking good. But I just have this one moment where I decide, I lived in Durban at the time. I decide I'm just going to go. I'm going to go to Joburg. I'm going to go to the embassy. I'm going to try my luck. I don't have flights. I have nothing, but I'm at least going to get a visa. I didn't know what the process of getting a visa was at the time because I'd never left the country. But one of the prerequisites often is that you already need to have your flights. But I'm like, I'm just going to go. And I remember at the time my mom saying, where are you going? Because I needed money to go to Joburg. Where are you going? You don't have funding for this thing. The chances of funding coming through now at such a short time are nil. Like it's not going to happen. And you're now just going to waste money going to Joburg for no reason. Also, you don't know anyone in Joburg. Like, what are you going to do? I'm like, no, I'm going to stay with this friend of mine, Michelle. She says it's fine. So I'm going to go. Anyway, I go take a bus, like 10-hour bus. I think, was it 8 hours back then? I don't remember. I take an 8-hour bus to Joburg. I get there. My friend receives me. The next day, I go to the embassy. When I get to the embassy, I'm there in the line and I just have my invitation letter. That's all I have. And I tell this guy my story and he's like, yeah, I've heard of that concert. He was Chinese. I've heard of that concert, but you don't even have half the documents you need for me to be even to even put you through to the next phase. Like you don't have what's needed for this phase, and I don't think I can put you through to the next one. And I'm like, oh no. He's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to write you a letter. I'm going to write you a note. I'm going to write a note for the next person that you're going to go to, and hopefully they will want to help you. Hopefully you find the lady that I'm thinking of, because she tends to be a little bit more helpful. But there's no way that I can guarantee that when you're standing in the queue, you're going to go directly to her. So he's like, I'm going to take this, but you need to get your flights. You need to get this stuff. Otherwise, this thing is not going to work. I'm like, no, I'm still working on it. But anyway, he pushes me through over to the next part, which is insane now that I think about it, because I just had that one piece of paper. He writes something. I don't know what the note says because it's in Chinese. But he just says, carry this note and give it to the lady, or give it to the person that you're called into. So I stand there in line, and the whole time I'm just like, I hope I get the lady that he's talking about. Like, I hope that it's her, even though I don't know what she looks like, what her name is, or anything. Anyway, I go through. Turns out I get that lady because she reads the note. She's like, this is weird, but okay, we'll start the process for you. But you need to have your flight tickets by this time. I leave there and I'm like, I can't believe that worked out. But the rest of the puzzle is still not figured out. When I tell you that my flight tickets were bought the night before, I got my visa. They gave me the visa without my flight. My flight tickets were bought the night before the actual trip, because this lady from the municipality back home where I'm from, like in KZN, calls me randomly, like around 5 o'clock. And she's like, hey, I heard this is what you're trying to do, and you've been asking for help and you haven't received it. Are you still going? I'm like, I'd like to. She says, I've spoken to the guys. We're going to try to do everything now. We're going to try book everything and send through some money to you. And. They did that thing in like about 2 hours and it was all done. And I couldn't even go back to Durban to get the rest of my clothes because I had gone thinking, I'll just see how it's going to go. So I get my flights, and the very next day I'm off to China. And now when I talk about it, it feels so, it's just like a story. But at the time, that whole experience changed my life, because I could not believe it. But then I always just think like, what if I hadn't gotten onto that bus? What if I'd been like, there's no clue, there's no proof that any of this could work out, so it's just not going to happen. I mean, I'd like to think that God would have found a way to get me there either way, but it again just informs this idea of, I think there's a reason why Jesus points to children as like a guideline for what it means to live a life of faith, and what it means to live a life alongside, him. I think it's that the childlike faith and the fact that children don't question, and that if you tell them this is what we're doing, they're like, let's go, and they just believe that if you've said it, it's gonna happen. And it goes back again to that thing of like when your grandmother used to say, go, I can see you, like, go, I can see you. The fact that we believed it, right? Like this creator on TikTok was saying, the fact that we believed it, the fact that we continued moving into the darkness, even though we could no longer see the grandmother, we could just hear their voice. And after a while, couldn't even hear that voice. But we continued moving because we trusted that she was there, she was looking on, and we could go further. I think that is something that we're not supposed to ever lose. That childlike faith, that belief that we don't have to figure it all out on our own, that we don't have to have all the answers, that you don't always have to move just because you already know what the next step looks like, is such an important part of being able to live life, because there is so much magic around us. There are so many miracles happening all the time. And I often like to think that they're always on the lookout for us, that there are miracles that are just like, okay, the moment she takes the step, we're coming through and we're going to help her and we're going to support her. And I share my Faith Chronicles to say, like, don't get to a point where you achieve so much that you think that you always need to have everything figured out, that you always need to be the one with the plan. Otherwise, nothing will happen. Leave a little room for some magic. Leave a little room for the miraculous things that you will not even be able to explain. About how did this thing even happen? Like, I didn't know. And a lot of the times it's like when we don't know, when we allow kind of like the unknown to take over, that God really shows up in incredible ways. Because I think when we have such a specific idea of what must happen and how it must happen, we can't see anything else. We play our cards close to our chest and we want to stick to the idea word for word, verbatim, step by step, and we don't allow for any missteps to happen or for any opportunities where maybe the magical could filter in, where maybe the miraculous could filter in. And I'm really now at a point in my life where I'm like, man, so much has happened. But if I'm really honest, a lot of the things that I've experienced and a lot of the opportunities and the successes that I have had the opportunity of, getting have been miraculous, have been things that I can't fully say I made it happen. There were certain things that just happened in a way where I was like, wait, where did that come from? Where I thought, even in moments where I thought I had a plan, the plan fell through and something else just took over, and it always worked out even better than the plan that I had, And so in this world of feeling like, you need to know what your life is going to look like in the next couple of years. You need to have a plan. How about you also look back into the moments where you didn't and it still worked out? And how about even when you do have a plan, what does it look like for you to surrender that plan to a higher power? What does it look like for you to surrender that plan to God, to say look, this is what I would like. This is what I think my next should look like, but I know that your plans tend to be bigger and greater than mine. And so I'm open. I'm open to what else could happen. I'm open to what other ways you could surprise me. I'm open to how else the story could end. Yes, I know that I have a specific idea. I have a specific vision. I have a specific way that I think the story should go, but I'm also open to miracles filtering in. And I'm open to you showing me a different way and a different perspective. And I've been really, really thinking a lot about that, of what it looks like to have hope, to have faith, and to trust in certain outcomes, but to also surrender so much of that into the unknown, and to go back to that part of myself that did things so fearlessly, the part of myself that left home with no transport fare, but just believed that I would get there, just believed that I would find a way to where it is that I was going, just believed that God would make a way for me. The part of myself that was like, I don't know what the next looks like. I don't know where I'm going to school. I don't know how this is going to happen. I don't know where I'm going to go. But it ended up working out. And I think that everybody has stories like that. I think wherever it is that you're listening from, I'm pretty certain that you have moments yourself where things just worked out without you having moved an inch, without you having had any idea of what was going to happen next. And I think maybe what's important to think about is, what does it look like to really lean into that in whatever season you're in? What does it look like to lean into, maybe let me relax and keep moving, trusting that you're watching me, trusting that even in the unknown, even in the darkness, things could actually work out. And what I'd actually like for you to do, if this resonates, is to write those down. Like, write down all your own faith chronicles. Like, what are the moments in your life, whether it was back when you were younger, whether it's now, where you stepped out not having a plan, you didn't know what was going to happen, and then somehow things just worked out. I chatted to a colleague of mine where she was like, she walked for miles carrying her CV, just believing that she would find somebody that she would give it to and that she would find a job. And she did. Like, what does that look like in your life? What are the moments where you have stepped out without a plan, but you've kind of trusted that someone is watching you, someone is watching over you, and it actually worked out? Write those down, retell those to yourself, to your brain, as a way to remind yourself that at no point in life are you actually expected to be the end all and the be all of your life. At no point are you expected to suddenly be the wisest person in the room that has all the answers. I think it is required at many points for all of us in our lives where we are supposed to just trust, where we don't have answers, but we're just called to just trust, where we don't know what's going to happen, but we're just called to just trust. There is nobody in this world that always knows exactly what's going to happen, that always has the exact right answer. And so even though you've gotten to a point where you can back yourself, and you've gotten to a point where you're like, oh no, I know for things to happen, I need to move like this and I need to move like that. But what does it also look like for you to have moments where you can let go and really just be like, remember back then when I didn't have all the answers, before I got the accolades, before I got the job, when I just used to go out with nothing and just trust that it would happen, where I had no name to fall back on, and I didn't even have pride or anything to lose, and I would just walk into certain doors and I would try and it would always work out. What does it look like for you to lean into that? And it's not to say that you throw the whole plan away. It's just to say we all have faith stories. We all have faith chronicles where our own plans fell through, our own ideas of what it was supposed to look like seemed like it would not work, but still something came through, still something worked out for us. And I'm really, really trusting that the more we go back to that, I think of a Bible verse that talks about going back to your first love, that you've neglected your first love. I think that really was the purest part of our relationship with God, where we were like, I don't even need you to give me a sign. I don't even need you to, I just know that you're going to work it out for me. I just know that you're going to make it happen for me. And I think the older we get, we start to neglect that part of ourselves, and we think it's all us, like it's me. I must make it happen. If I'm going to get the job, I need to do this. And it's true, but you got to leave a little room for the magic. You got to leave a little room for the stories that you will one day tell that just make no sense, where it's like, what? How did that even happen? And I think there's room for us to be those people again, to be those children who walk into a certain unknown, but at the back of their heads or like just behind them, they can hear, go, I can see you. Go, I can see you. And they can trust, that really they can be seen, that they are being seen, even if it's too dark for them to see, who's actually looking out for them. So yeah, I would love for you to tell me in the comment section, what are some of your faith chronicles? Like, what are some of the moments in your life where you thought, this is it, it's done, and then in the last moment, something just worked out? Or what are some of the moments where you stepped out in faith and you didn't know how it was going to work out, but you just trusted and it worked out, where, you went into the street and you didn't know who was going to pick you up or how it was going to happen, but you ended up at the destination where you needed to be. And I'm hoping that the more we tell our own stories, we can also strengthen each other when we get weary and when it gets really dark and we don't have an idea of where it is that we're going, but we can remind each other of like, I haven't always had a plan. I haven't always had it figured out, but I do have stories that I can tell where God came through for me at the very last second, and it turned out to be the best absolute experience of my life. Let's keep those stories alive. Let's keep telling them to ourselves, even in our weak moments, even in our moments where we're lacking faith. Let's dial them up as a way to really continue being able to step into the unknown, and so that we can take off the pressure of feeling like we need to have all the answers. There's no way that we can, but we can always trust that we know somebody who does. Thank you so much for tuning in. I can't wait to read your own faith chronicles. And I know that it's going to be so helpful to myself and everybody else that comes across it. Have a good one. Bye.